Hello, welcome again to Reina Clothier. I'm Ryan Nico Reina. Let's do another episode of government history and their garments. Haven't figured out a title yet, but I'm exploring different titles. But it's a neat segment episodes that I want to explore. So essentially, they are just critiquing the garments and the ensembles of public figures, of governmental figures of history, of U.S. history. Since we're in Texas, it's only appropriate to start with Texas government officials. So it's pretty neat. So let's continue on with that. Dan James Moody Jr. He was born in June 1st, 1893, and he passed away May 22nd, 1966. Was an American lawyer and Democratic politician. Originally from Taylor, Texas, he served as the 30th governor of Texas between 1927 and 1931. At the age of 33, he was elected. He took office as the youngest governor in history of Texas. After his two terms as governor, he returned to private law practice. He continued to prosecute and represent various functions of the U.S. government later in life. um, he he was a son of Taylor's mayor, justice of the peace, and school board chairman Daniel James Moody. He was one of the town's first settlers in 1876. His mother, Nanny Elizabeth Robertson, was a local school teacher when Moody married her in 1890. And Moody Jr. was an alumnus of the University of Texas Law, and he became a member of the State Bar of Texas at 21 in 1914. He began practicing with Harris, Mulaski, and Taylor during World War One. Moody served in both the Texas National Guard as first and second lieutenant, and then captain, and also in the United States Army as second lieutenant. In 1920, Moody served as Williamson County Attorney, a position he held for 2 years before becoming District Attorney in 1922. In the following year, 1923, Moody obtained an assault conviction against four members of the Ku Klux Klan for beating and tarring a white traveling salesman. The Texas Historical Commission wrote, these trials were considered the first prosecutorial um, success in the United States against the 1920s Klan and quickly weakened the Klan's political influence in Texas. The Klan was very powerful in Texas with the estimated 150,000 members in the state, including the National Imperial Wizard. Texas Klansmen included a U.S. Senator and Dallas, Fort Worth, and Wichita Falls mayors. The case was widely reported and gave him political momentum despite Klan opposition. After his election as Texas Attorney General in 1925, Moody conducted investigations of the highly corrupt James Ferguson, whose wife, Marion May Ferguson, was serving as the governor in Texas. His investigation recovered $1 million for the taxpayers of Texas. In 1927, Moody defeated her in the runoff election and became the youngest governor of Texas. Um, Suffragists, that's a word, activism provided a major contribution to her defeat as they rallied behind Moody and campaigned for him. The activist Yane McCollum, whom Moody would later appoint as Secretary of State, hosted the campaign headquarters in her own home. She and her colleagues hired a secretary and they sent letters, editorials, and pamphlets to Texas women to ask them to vote for Moody, a conservative Democrat who he served 2 years as governor before he left public office. He opposed the nomination of wet Catholic Al Smith in the 1928 presidential primaries, but unlike the Fergusons, he supported Smith against Herbert Hoover in the general election, which saw Texas vote Republican for the first time in its history. Moody supported a reform program of state prisons, roads, and auditing system. In the 1930s, he became a staunch critic of the United States President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal. quite a story on him. Very interesting story. I know there's, um, I think they're Moody Center here in Texas. I think it's the basketball stadium. So I know his name's mm, is around here as far as buildings or um, memorable buildings. So it's pretty interesting how how it's all panned out. Again, this was close to about 100 years ago, 90 plus years ago, and so it's pretty crazy. But let's go into their his garment um, selection that he chose. So this was in, let me see what year it was. Um, this was in 1931. So he must have yeah, close to 1931 or before. Obviously, when they take paintings like this, they essentially go about a year or so before they leave office. So, um, but let's see here his selection. So first off, his notch lapel is a little thin, and it's a round lapel instead of kind of a straight edge notch lapel, and the collar goes down a little bit longer. So if you notice the collar and this is the lapel, and then where it meets is called the gorge. The collar goes down just a little bit farther. Um, that was common for some time. I don't think it kind of um, stood its ground. But it served its purpose. I personally don't like it. I think the collar and the lapel is very thin, in my opinion. And if he when he does that, it is really it's really almost a testament to what the garment shows overall. So it shows more of his chest area. So it doesn't really look like a suit, in my opinion, when you have a very thin lapel because you have just so much fabric covering it. So it almost looks like just a shirt, if you will, a heavy shirt. So I personally don't like that. And the button stands, the first button stands a little high. So he might have a doesn't show on the painting, but it essentially might be a three-piece suit. So kind of the first button stands is a little higher, essentially. And it looks like he has a three-piece suit on there, but you don't see it too well. But the tie and the tie is nice, very simple tie. It looks like it has somewhat of a design where the knot is at, but the the collar itself, it has a round collar on the edge there, so it's not a point collar. It's a round one, and it's not spread at all. It's very narrow, the spread. So uh, I don't like that. Me personally, it doesn't stick out too much, but in those times, it was very popular. It was very common to have even a pin between the two sides of the collars, essentially. So a bar pin or a tie bar pin. So that's very common, and of course, you got to have a thin or a narrow collar to have that on. So um, it looks nice. Again, it's something that is really neat to show what it was at one point about 100 years ago. Um, I would say the tie and the jacket. Well, the tie would still be a timeless piece. The selection of the color of the shirt fabric, white, you can never go wrong with a nice white garment or a nice shirt garment. The collar is a little outdated, but still a nice classic look. But it does timestamp where you are at in the world. It's not a timeless piece essentially. So, but nevertheless, a nice look. And again, they don't really go as flamboyant with the fabric of the jacket or the suit. So it looks like just a charcoal or even a black one, a black fabric. So it's a nice look. Again, very formal, very conservative look, and it's a nice piece overall. So that will conclude this episode. And if you guys are interested in a custom made suit or sport jacket, feel free to go on our website, rainaclothier.com, and book your appointment. We'd love to work with you. And we work with clients in Texas and outside of Texas. So we have a wonderful experience and wonderful client experience. So you can have being outside of Texas as well. So love to serve you in that perspective. So until then, have a wonderful day.